everybody to Untold Sports Stories with Gerardo Byrne. I got a very special guest with me, senior volleyball player Sydney Ameluxen. Did I get it right?
Yeah.
There we go. Sydney Ameluxen joining us today, and what we'll be getting into with her, we'll talk about her background into the sport of volleyball, her coming from Texas, how she ended up in a liberal arts school in the middle of Richmond, Indiana, and we'll get into her career at Earlham as she is graduation as she's graduating this spring, correct? This spring.
Yes.
And she just finished her senior season during the volleyball season, so we'll get into all of that. Sydney, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So let's get into it. We'll start with growing up. Did you start volleyball at an early age, or was it something that you just kind of just gradually entered, like maybe middle school or something?
Yeah, so when I was growing up, I did a bunch of different sports. I was actually doing gymnastics at the time when my mom became friends with a girl I did gymnastics with. Her grandpa wanted to start a volleyball club as he had played when he was growing up and throughout his life. And he was like, hey, would Sydney be interested in it? And I had never heard of volleyball before. And I remember my mom asking me, and she had played in high school, so she liked it. She was like, hey, Sydney, do you want to play volleyball? And I was like, I don't know what that is. So, no. And then I came back later and was like, you know what? I'll try it out. So I was 8 years old when that happened, and then
Wow.
I've been playing ever since.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So second person that I've talked to who started with gymnastics and then played volleyball because of a friend kind of background. Were you still able to continue gymnastics while you started volleyball?
Yeah, I did for a little bit, and then I just didn't have the best relationship with my gymnastics coach. So then I just kind of went away from it, dabbled in soccer, in swim, and then ended up just sticking with
So
volleyball.
Did
Yeah.
gymnastics ended up helping you in not just volleyball but the other sports with all the different kind of footwork you had to do with gymnastics?
Yeah, you learn a lot, especially when you start from a young age, and I also have a background in dance on top of it. So I ended up picking that up in junior high as well. So it really definitely helps with agility.
All right. So when did you just fully take on volleyball as the main sport you wanted to play?
When I was 8.
When you were 8?
Right when it started.
Right when you started?
Yeah, first
Okay.
time when I learned how to do everything, I fell in love with it.
Fell in love with
Yeah.
it. Did you have the mindset that you just wanted to maybe play through high school, or did you have that dream of maybe wanting to go play after high school?
So I really didn't have a lot of thought about it until my senior year of high school, just because of the coaching experience I had prior to it. The coach I had my first 3 years of high school wasn't very supportive. And then we had a new coach my senior year. She was like a big sister to me. She was like, oh yeah, I'll help you out. And yeah, she really kind of planted that seed, hey, would you want to consider playing in college? And I was like, yeah, why not?
Talk about the importance of having a supportive coach. I'm not going to have you bash your old coach for
Right.
not being that supportive, but when you get that new coach that really shows that she cares about you and, can help you improve your game and also help you get recruiting, how does that, help you not just in volleyball, but just understanding that, there are people that I do better with people who care about me rather than who doesn't?
It really ignites your passion and really whatever's going on. With her coming in, never having coached before, but you could see how passionate she was about it and how much she wanted to help us. It made you want to be better, not just for yourself or the team, but for her as well, because you just respected her so much that you wanted her to be successful, and you played a role in it. So you're like, I'm just going to do whatever it takes. And I think that goes in with jobs in the real world and everything, when if you're a boss and you have the respect of your workers, everything's just going to go smoothly. But if you don't, or if you don't respect your boss or whoever's in charge of you, then it's not going to be a great time.
Exactly. Your main position's the libero, correct?
Libero, yes.
Libero, sorry.
No, you're good.
The libero. Is that the main position you played when you started through high school, or were you interchangeable?
All right, so I'm 5'5" and a half, 5'6"-ish, right? AKA not very tall in terms of volleyball. But when you're 8, 9, 10, 11, up until I was 12, I played all the way around, and then in junior high, I was an outside hitter and a setter. At the same time, I would set from the back row, hit outside in the front row, which is odd. Usually it's on the right side. But yeah, so I did that, and then I remember my freshman year of high school, like going into tryouts, my dad was like, Sid, like, you should probably start thinking about playing defense because you're not tall. I was like, I mean, you're right. And then during tryouts, the JV coach was like, look, they don't put freshmen on varsity here very often. If you want to be on JV instead of the freshman team, you're going to play back row. I was like, okay, bet, let's go. And I just really embraced it from then on, and that's what I've played.
There you go.
8 years.
8 years?
Yeah.
Well, you got very good at it.
I thank you.
Did you have, like, when you started to realize that you wanted to maybe take this past high school, did you have, like, the dreams of wanting to play Division I, or was that just not a thought process?
Like, of course, that's everyone's, like, dream, like, ooh, like, what if I can play D1? But, like, I had to face the reality of it. Like, I came into the games, like, the recruiting games so late. It's like nowadays, like, D1 coaches are starting, like, 8th grade, like, 7th, 8th grade, looking at players and having them, like, verbally commit, like, their freshman or sophomore year of high school.
Okay.
So, yeah, I just had to accept that that was not a very high possibility. Like, a fluke could happen and it could be a thing, but overall I was like, yeah. And then I started thinking about what I wanted out of an education as well, because I don't plan on going pro for volleyball. And just really taking into consideration what I wanted to do after my time as a potential, like, college student athlete. Yeah, that really played a big part in it as well.
So talk about how the recruiting process went for you. Where you, how did you find Earlham, or did Earlham find you, and what other schools were looking at you, or what you were potentially going to do?
All right, so originally, here's the story.
Here we go.
Okay, so it was my first semester of my senior year of high school.
Okay.
And I was like, ooh, like, I should probably figure out what I'm doing for college. And, like, I'm from Wichita Falls, Texas, and I knew I did not want to stay there.
Okay.
And then, like, out-of-state tuition was, like, played a big role in it, like, financially and everything. So my parents were like, oh, you're probably going to need to stay in Texas. And I was like, okay. So I applied and got accepted to Texas Tech University in Lubbock, which I was really excited about. Even though on my tour there, they said they had a lecture hall that fit 500 people. And I was like, wow, like, now I can't even imagine being in a class that big. Yeah. But I was actually, like, just searching around on the internet at home after school one day. And I was like, oh, I'm trying to remember what an assistant coach I had, like, my sophomore year of high school, what her name was, because I couldn't remember, like, her, like, new, like, married name.
Yeah.
And so I was, like, looking at it. And then I came across one of my teammates. She had an NCSA, like, athlete recruiting profile.
Yeah, I know what those are.
And I was like, I have no idea what this is. So I, like, clicked on it, and I was like, oh. And then, like, something just clicked, and I was like, you know, like, I'm just going to go for it and see what happens. Like, the worst that's going to happen is that it doesn't happen, you know, that I get told no. And I talked to my parents about it. We set everything up. And then as soon as I submitted my first video, I got an email from Lauren. And I was like, oh, what's Earlham? And honestly, I'm a very go-with-the-flow type of person. And I'm like, oh, that sounds good. Okay, let's do it. And so I didn't really, like, I had other, like, schools, like, messaging me. And I was like, you don't have a history program, because I knew that's what I wanted to go into.
Of course.
I was like, you don't have a history program. You don't. And then Lauren was the only one who was, like, who I could feel was actually, like, genuinely invested into it. So I was like, you know, like, I'll give it a shot. We played phone tag a little bit. Because I also did theater all 4 years of high school, so I'd be in rehearsal, and then she'd be busy, and then I remember we had our first actual phone call. My parents, the 3 of us went to Walmart, and I was like, oh, like, this coach is calling me. They're like, okay, you just sit out here, we'll go in and buy things. So I just had the first recruiting call in a Walmart parking lot. And she was at a volleyball tournament, and we actually talked about this the other day. We were like reminiscing on everything. And yep, set up a visit. Had to make sure I was accepted first, because my parents were like, we're not driving 14 hours, because that's how far away it is, to come visit a school you didn't even get into. So I had to call admissions and be like, did I get in? Because they hadn't sent out letters yet, or they had just started to. And they were like, okay, well, look, we'll call you back. most nerve-wracking, like, 20 minutes of my life. Like, I was standing outside, like, waiting. I was like, oh, my gosh. And then they called me. They're like, Sydney? I was like, yes. They're like, well, we have your file. And I was like, oh, no. They were like, congratulations. And I was like, yeah, let's go. And, yeah, and that's how I ended up here at Earlham.
So by just clicking on a friend's NCSA profile.
While looking for a different coach. Yeah.
That gave you the idea to start your own.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's how Coach Horton found you.
Yes.
Okay, wasn't the story I was expecting to hear, but hey, I've heard weirder things happen before.
True.
Okay, so Coach Horton gets you to come on a visit, and you had to drive 14 hours
Yes.
to come up here.
Mm-hmm.
One, how did you convince your parents to drive you up here 14 hours? And two, what was the visit like? Because when I spoke to Coach Horton, I asked, how do you make recruits feel comfortable and at home away from home? So describe your recruiting visit here.
All right, so starting with how I convinced my parents. Well, my parents aren't the biggest fan of Wichita Falls either, so they were all for me, like, leaving. I grew up in a military family, so we moved around a lot.
Same.
So I was just like, okay, I need, like, a new environment. I need something else to, like, pique my interest. And we always went on road trips. So and my dad doesn't like flying, even though he was in the Air Force for, like, 20 years. He's like, no, like, let's drive. And so I've adopted the love for road trips. So it wasn't too hard to convince them, other than making sure I was accepted first, because I didn't want to drive all the way for nothing.
That's true.
And they told me, like, you're only going to go to school up here if you play volleyball. So I was like, okay. It's like, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how that went. And then when I came up here, it was the first day back from classes from winter break, and it was Martin Luther King Junior Day. So like January like 18th or something like that. And I remember I told Lauren, like, she was Lauren Crump at the time. This was before she got married. And I remember telling her that I was interested in history, and she was like, oh my gosh, like, there was one other girl on the team who graduated last year, Skylar Muckway, who was also a history major. She's the only other one I've ever encountered on the team. And she was like, and Coach was like, oh my gosh, okay, so we have this really awesome history professor. Would you like to meet him when he was here? And I was like, yes, I would love to. She was like, we have another history major on the team. Like, she's really into it. And I was like, great, like, that's awesome. And I came and then, like, kind of met everyone. There was Lauren Jackson, our setter, was actually on the same visit. So I met her then, too. Yeah. And yeah, we just ate. I met the whole team. Honestly, my recruiting stay wasn't the best thing. It was kind of awkward. It was weird. Like the stay in the night part with who I was rooming with. But I still came back.
Of course.
But yeah, we played open gym, and I just really liked it. I really liked a lot of the girls. So I liked the school. I sat in on one of Ryan Murphy's, who's also a history professor, and I love him. I sat in on his Intro to U.S. History since 1865 class, and I could just tell that he was so passionate about what he was teaching. And I'm a really passionate person, so when I, like, see people who are really passionate, I'm, like, drawn to it, and I'm like, okay, you're passionate about it, I'm passionate about it, like, awesome.
It's a good mix.
Yeah, and the classes were smaller, and this was an intro class, and there was only, like, 30 people in it, which to me, I'm like, oh, these are, like, the class sizes I have at my high school.
Well, one, for people who don't know, a 30-person class here is actually
It's
one
big.
of the bigger ones.
Yeah.
Because I got classes with maybe 12 kids.
The two classes I have today, the max, like, the biggest class is literally like 12 people.
Exactly. So a 30-person class is actually big on this campus.
Yeah.
First off, understanding the military aspect part. Yep, I grew up in a military family. We moved countries, though.
Yeah, same.
Oh, you, for real?
Yeah, we lived in Australia.
Damn.
I was born in Hawaii, and then we moved to Australia, and then
Okay, we got plenty of other things
ended
we're
in
gonna talk
Texas.
about. We got some more things we want to talk about off the camera. But yeah, and then also I get the road trip because I drive out here from California.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Oh
that's
my
about
gosh.
33-hour drive.
Yeah.
So I understanding the long drive as well. So you just explained how Coach Horton and the history department sold you on this school. How were they able to sell your parents for you to come here?
So after we visited, also I forgot to mention it was like 12 degrees outside. My parents are from Michigan and Minnesota, so they were already like Midwest, 4 seasons. My mom remember like they just came up here for senior night. They were like, "Oh my God, the trees are so pretty. It's so crisp. Like it's so nice that we're not in just Texas the whole time." So they were already pretty much sold on it. They were like, "Okay, cool. Like it's in the Midwest. It's a good school. Like academically, you get the chance to play volleyball." At the end of the day, when they picked me up on the second day, they were like, "Okay, so what do you think?" And I was like, "Oh, like I really like it." They were like, "Cool, us too." They really were not that hard to convince to let me come up here. And they always tell me anytime, because I only go home for Christmas break. Because I work in Pennsylvania during the summers, and then yeah, so I never really go home that much.
Yeah, I get that.
But when I do go home, they're always like, "Oh, so-and-so asked if we miss you a lot." And they are always like, "Why did you let her go so far away?" And they're like, she's doing her own thing. Like, my brother's in the military, too, so we're both gone, and they get to do their own thing.
You know, I can't argue with that. You actually answered the next point I was going to bring up, because I get mixed answers when asking athletes about going far away from home. Some prefer to stay closer to home, but one, coming from a military family, moving ain't hard at all. And two, based off what you have said so far about Wichita Falls, correct?
Yes.
That you were eager to get up out of there.
I was ready to leave. Yeah.
So it wasn't hard at all leaving home to come up here? Not
at all. Yeah, Wichita Falls is the type of place where people will come in from all over, but no one ever really leaves. So when they do, it's like this big story, like, "Oh my gosh, did you hear she left?"
Oh, so it's a small place like that?
So it has 100,000 people in it. So it's really big, and I thought that was like a normal city size, but then I moved here and I was really wrong.
Yeah.
Apparently 100,000 people is quite a bigger size than most places people are from. But it has a very small town mentality. Yeah, everyone knows everything that's happening in everyone's life, even though there's so many people. It's a time.
I'm trying to imagine that with 100,000 people. Wow. You come into Earlham starting your freshman year. First off, what was the adjustment like just from high school to college volleyball? And two, as a freshman, did you see a lot of game time, or was it more about a learning curve for you?
All right, so during my phone call with Lauren, Coach Horton, she told me straight up that we are in the process of rebuilding, and she was like, "We're not going to be very good your freshman year. Like we're going to be straight up with you. That's just the facts of how it's going to go." And she told all three of us seniors that this year. When she was recruiting all of us. So we all knew coming in that we were going to start from pretty much nothing. And we actually won 6 games freshman year. So that was a big accomplishment in itself.
Yeah.
No conference games, but 6 is better than like none at all or a couple.
Yeah.
And yeah, so going into that, it wasn't the biggest adjustment. It was like a pretty similar flow because, again, we were just starting out and like in the rebuilding process of getting like better and better players like over the years. So it wasn't that big of an adjustment. Looking at where we are now compared to where we were then is drastically different though.
Oh yeah, we're gonna gradually work our way to
that.
that.
All right, perfect. Foreshadowing, that's how it went.
Exactly, a big foreshadow. So you didn't have any issue coming in knowing when Coach Horton told you a little bit of the history of the program. You had that mindset to where like I want to be one of the ones that change it around?
Yeah, that's what happened at my high school actually as well. It's the same thing. We just kept building our way up to be better and better each year.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's like, it's like a little repeat. History repeats itself.
Hey, lucky for you, because I've been on the bottom and have stayed there before.
Yeah.
We ain't going to get too far into that. But
yeah.
So you win 6 games your freshman year, but still none in the conference. But I can imagine after the 6-win season going into sophomore year, you can see the improvement the team that was heading towards, correct?
Yes, we won our first conference game against Manchester University in 5 sets. My sophomore year, that was a big accomplishment, and honestly, we lost the first 2 sets, and then we came back.
Okay.
0-2, and then we just bounced back and just flew through the last 3 sets.
What was that feeling like, not just for yourself, but just knowing you just got Coach Horton's first conference win,
Right.
and I believe not in history the first conference win for the
In the HCAC.
yes,
Yeah.
because there's been other conference before,
Right.
but that was the first conference win in the ACAC. So what was that feeling like?
It was crazy. Just like all of the excitement. You could tell how proud Coach Horton was of all of us, because she's like seen us progress from when she was an assistant to her first year as head to coming in, bringing in all these other people, and really kind of changing the program and flipping it on its head to where it's something already like 20 times greater than it was the year prior. So that was really cool. Just seeing how proud everyone was, because we finally were seeing the results that from the work that we'd been putting in. Like for us sophomores at the time, like those, like that year and however many times, the seniors, especially for them to see, or the senior to see how far we had come from their freshman year.
Yes.
And it was just crazy because no one thought we could do it. Everyone was like, oh, the volleyball team, like, ugh.
I
Like,
mean,
they're not good and blah, blah, blah. But just to come out on top was really cool.
of course, one, I know what you mean by that, and two, yeah, I think another aspect people tend to forget is because the record doesn't show it, that they don't think you work just as hard as maybe other teams.
Right.
And I can imagine you guys were putting in, working hard as any other team, just the wins just weren't showing that.
Right.
And I think that that's an aspect that people tend to forget. But anyway, so did you win 2 conference games your sophomore, or just that one?
It was multiple.
Yeah, you won multiple games.
We missed the conference tournament by 1 game.
By one
I
game
believe. Yeah.
your sophomore year, correct?
Yes.
But again, the direction the program was trending to was a much more positive. It was a much more positive direction. So coming back your junior year, knowing you missed the conference tournament by 1 game, and then your junior year is when the big recruiting class came in. So did you feel like this could be a year that we break that ice and get into the conference tournament?
Oh, yeah. When we had the recruits who were sophomores this year, when they were
Yes.
coming in on their visits, all of us were getting so excited because they were good. And we were like, okay, we need all of these people to come in and like help us out, because they're what's really going to help turn the program around. Because when you're recruiting, the goal is to get people who are either at or above the level of people you already have. Like, you're not trying to recruit people who like could like potentially grow, but maybe not. Like, you want people who can already perform where you need them to be. And seeing like all of them come in as recruits, we were like, yes. And when we found out like which ones had committed, complete excitement. We were like, oh, this is going to be so good, especially for our offense, because all of them, all of them are offensive players.
Okay.
Who
And
came in.
also, when you guys started to win more, I'm sure you saw a difference in the caliber of players that you guys were able to recruit.
Right. When you are more successful, you get
Better players.
Yeah, better players, because it's hard to find a lot of players who are like, oh, like they're struggling. I want to be one of the people who helps them out. Especially nowadays, you get a lot of people who are like, oh, well, I just want to come into something that's already been successful. So it's honestly tricky when you have players who come in like that at first. Because I remember Coach sitting us upperclassmen down, being like, oh, how do you think of the freshmen? And I remember we were like, oh, it's so frustrating. They don't have to work hard. They're feeling like we feel like they're not putting in as much work as the rest of us. They don't seem to care as much. And Coach has always had to be like, look, they did not go through the grind to get where we are now. They didn't have to go through losing every single game or the majority of your games before getting to this point. Like, they didn't have to experience like the embarrassment of being like, oh, like, how'd the game go? Oh, we lost again.
Yeah.
They didn't have to go through the hardships that we had to.
But that also brings back the foundation that previous seniors and senior classes have built for this program, that they didn't have to go through
Right.
those hardships. So junior year, you guys are starting to make a name for the Earlham program.
We did. It was the first year we were not ranked 10th in
the
conference
ACL.
going into the going into the season. Yeah.
Then you go through non-conference. I think it was pretty a successful non-conference.
Mhm.
Then you get in the conference and you win the most games in program history in the ACAC. You get to the conference tournament, and then you get to host a first-round game.
Yeah.
So what was that feeling like? Not only actually now breaking the ice of getting into the tournament, but now you get to host a first-round game in front of the school.
Yeah. So going into like nearing the end of conference, so a little backstory.
Okay.
I got diagnosed with mono.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it was rough because I think we had 2 conference games left. I think it was 3. 2 or 3 conference games left, and I ended up having to go to the hospital for it because, we didn't know what was going on, and then I told Coach what was happening, and she was like, oh my gosh, like, why now? And I was like, I know, like, I don't know what's going on. So it was really cool to see, because we had already made it into the tournament, but then we had, potentially, and then we had, I think we played Bluffton to solidify our spot in the tournament, and then they played Rose. And then we beat them on their senior night, which solidified us hosting. And then just being able to, like, watch all of this happen it's bittersweet, you know? Like, when you're injured, you're like, or you can't play, you're like, oh, like, I would do anything to be able to play.
Of course.
But to see the program be so successful, especially in, like, pushing through, like, the adversity and everything towards the end of the season, it was really cool to see. Especially when we played Wittenberg, who at that time I think was ranked 3rd in D3 in the country, and we lost in 5 sets, but we took them to 5 sets to the point where their coach didn't want them to play us this last season because we like bruised your ego too bad or whatever. But it was really cool to see everyone like work so hard together, and when I got like my strength back, I was able to like cheer and everything on the side, so it was just so cool to just like sit back and like watch it all happen because we had worked so hard to get there.
So you didn't get to even play in the playoff game.
Right. I didn't play in any of the games leading up to it, or the opening, or the semis.
Wow. That can be a heartbreaker, and I'm sure it was personally for you. And you know, it shows what kind of teammate you were to put that aside and still being able to cheer on the team. But I'm sure it gave you extra fire to come back your senior year to
really
want to
did,
be a part of it. So talk about senior year, big recruiting class turns. Now you got a year of experience with these sophomores, and then you guys start out the season. I think you started off a little slow, rocky, but then you guys picked up momentum and just started going.
Right. So we started off at the Mount Union tournament, and Mount Union's just good. I feel like so many sports they do, they're always like so good at it. And we played Muskegum, that was our first game, like our first actual game of the season. And I think they were ranked 14th or 16th in the nation. And we may have lost in 3, but it was a good 3 sets. It wasn't us just letting them walk all over us. We battled back. And just to see us like bounce back from losing against those really good teams, and to see us turn it around. And throughout our pre-conference, what we call tournament season, when we went to Illinois Wesleyan, undefeated, we played 5 sets each game, so we played a straight 15 sets. But just to see us push through all of that and come out on top and continue to come out on top was really cool. And I feel like that really pushed us off to a really great start of showing we can battle with these ranked teams. We can battle with these good, solid programs and still win. So that was really cool to see, and it was really good to have that going into conference.
Well, one, I think it shows the respect you guys were earning. One, you guys played so many ranked opponents in preseason, and not just playing them. You guys were actually, really competing with them. But then to show, it also, gives you guys, you guys weren't winning, but it also can, give you guys some confidence. You know what? We're right there.
Yeah, we can do this.
You know what? These are some of the top teams in the country. we're not just getting embarrassed out here. We're actually really competing with them. So it gives you confidence heading into conference. So before we start talking about the conference, what were the goals for this team this year in conference? And I'm sure obviously the biggest one is to win the conference. But was it like, okay, let's see if we can get one of the higher seeds, beat Transylvania? Like, what were the goals that the team had set?
So we had a sit-down session during preseason of goals we wanted to set for ourselves, and we had the whole whiteboard filled up in our locker room of different goals and things we wanted to accomplish, but we narrowed it down to 3 main ones. First was win a conference tournament. 2 was be a selfless teammate. And the 3rd was to have a 3.5 team average GPA. So we don't know about that one yet. But we had those first 2 to really focus on. Yeah. A lot of our other goals were we want to beat teams we've never beaten before. So we called that historic wins. Obviously, win the tournament and historic win. Transy would be included in that. Transy, Hanover, and Defiance. Because those are the 3 we had never beaten before. Plot twist, we beat 2 of them. Yeah. 2 of the 3. Yeah, we had a bunch of, we called them, our side goals that we weren't, we were focused on, and then we had our own personal goals. We would write down practice goals on little note card, or not note cards, sticky notes.
Yeah, okay.
For practice, and then we'd write it down and put it up in our locker, and we would read it. And we would keep that goal until we made it. And then we had this big glass jar that we would put our completed individual practice goals in. And I think we're going to go through that at our end of season banquet type thing. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot of goals.
Yeah.
So moving through conference, you guys have, I think, 3rd seed or tied with 3rd, and then senior night comes up, and you play Rose Holman, who I think was either 1 game ahead of you or you guys were tied at that time.
Right.
But one senior night for you. So what was the emotion like going for you into that game, and then knowing the implications of the team you were playing and if you beat them, what that could do setting up for the playoffs? But what was the senior night like for you?
Ooh, it was emotional, but in a good way. It wasn't oh my God, I'm a senior type thing. I was heck yeah, it's senior night, let's go. We had the Centerville High School band.
Yeah.
And I love drum lines and just bands in general. So them playing got me so hyped for that whole game. It was good. It was emotions were high. Everyone's energy was all the way up here, 1,000%. No one was slacking. And knowing that it was Rose, I just thought, I was oh man, we beat them on their senior night last year, but then we lost to them in semis, junior year.
Yeah.
So I was we're just gonna go for it and just see whatever happens. And then we won.
You didn't just win, you swept them.
Yeah, it was good. I think we went 4.
No, you swept them.
We swept them?
Yeah.
That was so long ago, I feel like.
Yeah.
I remember feeling oh man, this is about to go to 4.
The only reason I know is because I had the pleasure of calling the game, so I know you guys swept them. But also, how many times have your parents been able to come up here and actually watch you play?
Oh, okay, let's see. They didn't my freshman year. My sophomore year, they came to Illinois, because we always have a tournament in Illinois.
It's a little.
They always go to that just because it's a little closer.
Yeah.
They went to a Quaker Classic my junior year, and then Illinois.
Okay.
And my senior night. So 4 times.
They've been to a good amount. But what was that walkout with them like?
Oh, it was like a flashback to high school. With the walking out with the flowers. I don't like to be the center of attention. So we were standing there and I was okay, can we go now? And I was the last senior to go out there.
Yeah.
So I was I don't know. I was are we ready to go? And they're no, we have pictures. I was oh, why? Can we just go? Yeah.
But before we move into the conference tournament, I want to go back to the game you guys played against Transy. And I remember I was talking to Sarah about this, and even Coach Horton. And from people who weren't there from the outside, if you looked at the score sheet, you see a 3-0 sweep.
Mm-hmm.
But from what I saw, being at the game and able to watch it, yeah, you guys lost it in a 3-0 set, but every set was competitive, and at every set you were right there.
Yeah.
So what do you feel like that told the team that, you know what, this is, one, they were ranked in the country at the time, and this is who they picked to win the tournament, and you know what, if a couple more things go our way, we might have this game.
Yeah. It was a battle, that's for sure. We weren't just going to be like, oh, like it's Transy, they're ranked 20th in the nation. Like we weren't, like we knew they were ranked, and that's, I feel like that gave us even more of a drive to beat them because everyone knew they were so good. We were like, okay, well, we want this upset because no one thinks that we could win.
Yeah.
And like we didn't win, but to show that we have the potential to really said something. I think that was our second conference game.
Yeah, it was earlier.
And it was home too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just have like our crowd and everything. It was a much different atmosphere than like any time like previously we had ever played them before.
We just finished talking about the first time you guys played Transylvania, then you guys get a big boost throughout the rest of conference, and you know you're going to finish one of the higher seeds. And on your senior night, you have to beat Rose-Hulman to secure that third seed.
Right.
One, what was it like knowing that was on the line, playing against a very good Rose-Hulman team, but then it's also on your senior night, a lot of emotions going into that game?
Right. So I hadn't played Rose since my sophomore year because my junior year I was out with Mono when we played them both times. And so I was really nervous but also excited just because I knew they like historically had a pretty good program, especially the last couple of years that I've been here. And just going into senior night, like the emotions were all on high. We had the Centerville High School band there. And I love drum lines, so it was really cool. That hyped me up. My whole family was there. Some of my friends were there who don't go to school here, so it was just super cool. Knowing that it was on the line to secure the spot definitely added to the nerves, but they were good nerves.
Yeah,
like, it was we're going to go out and do this. Definitely going to get this dub. It's going to be great. And then we did it, so it was really exciting. Especially after losing to them in the semis last year.
Yeah, and then getting that revenge on them for not just last year, but also a better position for the conference tournament.
Right.
You guys get that win, actually sweep them. It was actually a pretty easy game for y'all.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, I ain't gonna lie, I wasn't anticipating it. I was expecting like maybe at least 4 sets in that game. But yeah, y'all came out and swept them. Now we get in the conference tournament. You guys are the 3 seed. I want to say for the second straight year.
Yeah.
But this time, last year you guys went in as a 3 seed, but it was just like, wow, we made the tournament for the first time in program history.
Right.
You get a win, and just the emotion off of that was just great in itself. But this time you guys went in there with unfinished business. Like, I feel like that was the mentality. It wasn't like last year, like, we made the tournament for the first time. It's like, nah, we back, and we got stuff to do. And you get to host Bluffton, and you guys easily beat them.
Oh, yeah, swept them.
Yeah, swept them. And now you head to the second round to play against Hanover,
Right.
a team that a few weeks ago had just swept y'all. So what was the mindset going into that matchup?
Revenge. We were looking at who we were going to play in the first round, and then once that got settled, we were like, all right, now we're going to play Hanover. Round 2, a lot of us were like, okay, they absolutely destroyed us during conference. They're going to come into this game super confident, probably overconfident, like, oh, we did it like a few weeks ago. This is going to be really easy. So they underestimated us, which I thought was a great advantage.
Of course.
And then honestly, like during the warm-ups, it was like we already won. Giselle Moore came up to me during the warm-ups and she was like, Sid, like, I feel like we already won this game. And like the whistle hadn't even been blown for the first point to even be scored yet. Because they were pretty much dead on the other side. Like, they were looking at us like, what are they doing? And it was just such like a great, like, intense energy, but I was excited.
Yeah.
Because we were ready to go out, ready to show them what we were really made of. Because when we played them, it was their best game and our absolute worst game of, like, the whole season.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
So just to, like, show up and show them who Earlham volleyball is was amazing.
Yeah, I heard when I spoke with Coach Horton that the energy and how loud you guys were in the warm-ups, that even once the game got started, I think the Hanover coach called a quick timeout.
Yeah, they did.
Because of your energy. And what did Coach Horton say in that huddle after that first timeout was gone?
Okay, so when the other coach, when he called the timeout, Coach Horton was so excited. She was like, "Look at them! They're even like the players on the court are even looking at our bench of how much energy we have. They're so intimidated right now. They don't know what to do with themselves." And it was so cool to see her get so hyped up about it. And that just hyped the rest of us up, like, even more than we already were. Just to know that we were all just, like, so ready for it. It was great.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's actually a very great game.
Yeah, it was wild. It was a roller coaster, but yeah.
It ends up going 5 sets, and even going a little bit
over
in the 5th set.
Yeah.
And I think, if I remember correctly, the way the game ended was off one of their errors. But when they made that error and that ball hit the ground and game over, the horn sounds, what was that feeling like?
I can't even like put it into words. It was so amazing. I just screaming and like can't like, you can believe it happened, but in the moment it's like, I can't believe we just did this. We beat Hanover for the first time. We made it to the finals for the first time ever, and only our second appearance in the HCAC tournament, which was really impressive to just make it the year prior and then to go as far as we did. It was just amazing. It was
I
definitely
can't
my
imagine.
favorite memory from the last 4 years, for sure.
Just the amount of emotion that I can imagine that was, like I said, going to the conference championship for the first time and only your second ACAC tournament appearance, getting revenge on a team that embarrassed y'all earlier in the year. The emotion probably just poured out of everybody. I remember the team rushed the court, so the emotion was fly high. Teresa,
who came with us, one of the trainers, she was crying. We were like, "Mama T!" Oh my gosh! Like, everyone was crying, everyone was cheering. It was great.
Yeah, but with all that excitement, in less than
less than 24
hours, you had to be back on that court for an even bigger game, the conference championship versus a team that you guys played very well earlier in the year, Transylvania. You're at their home gym, and that didn't go the way you guys would have hoped for it to go.
Nope. It was rough. I've said this before to other people, so I'll say it now. We used everything we had against Hanover. We hadn't played a team less than 24 hours later since tournament season.
Even during tournament season, you guys didn't have that much emotion coming off one of the wins. I'm gonna assume that. Right.
Yeah. No win we had during tournament season was as big as the what I think was against the win against Hanover the second time we played them. But I remember at the Illinois Wesleyan tournament, we played 15 straight sets and won all 3 matches that we played. But we hadn't done that since way earlier in the season.
A few months ago.
Yeah, to go into playing an intense 5-set match against Hanover, come out on top, still have the emotions from that, literally put everything we had into that game, because you never know, if you lose, you're going home.
Yeah.
So you had to give everything you could in that game, and then to turn around, it was a total day and night difference. Even warm-ups against Transy, it was not too hot.
Yeah.
It wasn't good at all, honestly. We had our fans come on the bus, which was really exciting, but we weren't there mentally or physically, which sucks.
Yeah.
But it gives them space to grow even more next year.
Of course, I feel like that's a growing pain that Earlham had to go through on learning that even though in great wins, we've got to let that go and focus on the next one.
Yeah, you have
especially
to
against a high-power team like that.
Yeah, and you know, Transy really wanted it too. Like I feel like because last year they lost to Rose,
In their gym.
also at their
Yeah.
home gym in the same round. So you know they were coming out for it. They went undefeated during conference. Yeah, it was just a total.
That wasn't the team to be messed with. No. So it didn't go the way you wanted. And one thing I brought up with Coach Horton that I wanted to get your opinion about was just the amount of support you guys got from Earlham. You know, after you beat Hanover, I'm seeing videos of all the other athletic teams that are on their games. You know, sending cheerful videos to you guys. The president arranged buses for students to come up there. And I think my favorite one I saw was the after the championship game, my man Zach Brake had the Horton for president poster. But just talk about what it meant for not just you but the entire team to have that amount of support coming from Earlham.
I think it was really special because this was the first time you'd really had that much support. I think probably in the program's history, honestly, because we were becoming so successful. In all aspects. It wasn't just because we were winning. I think we had a really strong team of really amazing women as well, which was really great. And we reached out all over campus during season. I think our communication with everyone, especially with the professors, really helped out.
Yeah.
And then just to get the support of not just the Earlham community, but also the Richmond community as well. Like that started to trickle in more. So just to see the impact that we've made on Richmond and on Earlham over the last 4 years, like seeing the support grow has been amazing. Because at first it was like very minimal. It was like, okay, your friends supported you, but like no one else did. And then just to see like the progression from just friends to like the outside of Earlham community is really cool.
And it's only continuing to grow.
Exactly,
The program's heading in a great direction. Let's see, what was my question? Here we go. After, I know the season ended a couple months ago.
Yeah. Well,
maybe not a couple,
early,
but
like last month.
Early last month. What do you feel like in your 4 years here at Earlham playing volleyball? What do you feel like your biggest takeaway from your experience here was?
Definitely to just push through it, grind it out, and if you want it bad enough, it'll happen. But you have to want it, and you have to put in the work to actually get it. No one's going to hand you anything. Like on the court, no one's going to hand you a spot. You have to earn it.
Of course.
In life, no one's just going to hand you a job. You have to do everything leading up to that interview to be able to get it, and then show up in the interview and not just expect it to be handed to you because of what your last name is, because of where you're from, because of what you look like. None of that matters. So just to like push through it and really succeed at what you want to do is really going to push you.
Yeah, that couldn't have said it better myself. What do you feel like in the 4 years playing under Coach Horton? What do you feel like how she progressed as a coach? Because you had her when she started out young,
right?
And
yeah.
now to where she's at now, what do you feel like the biggest change in her came from?
I feel like because she has changed a lot, and I told her this. She
said it to me. She's changed a lot.
Yeah, we talked about this in our exit meeting for the end of the season. I was like, Coach, you've changed so much since my first year. I feel like her look, like her overview of the game has changed a lot. She isn't just focused on setting, because that's what she was, like all throughout her life. She was a setter, so very like offensively minded. She's brought in really good assistant coaches to help with other aspects, especially with defense. She's showed a lot more appreciation for everyone else on the team. I feel like she's gained a lot of communication skills and leadership skills, and knows that to be successful, you always will eventually need to make difficult decisions that won't necessarily make everyone happy. But yeah, she's just grown as a person and as a coach. And I think becoming a mother throughout this whole thing with 2 kids over the last few years has really also changed her outlook on it. But, you know, sometimes when coaches have kids during their coaching career, it changes them for the negative. But I think it's really given Coach like a positive boost and like a different outlook on the girls on the team. I feel like it's become more of a very, not super motherly, but has like that aspect of it, of like the tough love. I'm willing to push you to become better and not just like yell at you and punish you.
I feel that, and I feel like the best experiences happen when players and coaches can grow together.
Right.
And
yeah.
I feel like, you've gotten to experience that for 4 years. All seniors and coaches got to grow up together and learn together, and I feel like that makes for the best experience possible.
Yeah, all of us have changed so much over the years, and it's just so cool because we've all changed together.
Yeah. So what's next for you? You got one more semester here before you graduate, right?
Yes.
And after that semester, life starts.
Exactly. I've become an actual adult.
Exactly.
I may be 21 now, but I'm not an adult yet. So I've applied to grad schools, so I start to hear back on those in late January. Fingers crossed. Yeah, so I'll most likely be staying in the Midwest just because that's where my top picks for grad school are. I want to get a master's in library science.
Okay.
Plan A is to become an archivist somewhere and work with archives, and eventually get to the point where I can set up a program to kind of gain people's interest into history. Because a lot of times people always will tell me how much they hate history. And I'm like, was one of your history teachers in high school like a coach who didn't really care? And 99% of them are like, yeah, how'd you know? And I'm like, I'm from Texas. That's what everything's like.
Exactly.
So I love teaching people and I love helping people. So if I can do that along with like my love of organization and old documents, just be able to like mesh the two together would be really awesome.
Any plans or any feelings of wanting to stay close to the sport of volleyball?
So plan C, actually. If that doesn't work out, I'd probably I would like to be like a high school history teacher, and also like coach volleyball.
Coach volleyball?
Yeah.
Wow, you have A, B, and C plans
Yes,
already?
I do. Can never be too prepared.
Hey, you know what? That is the true statement. Most people don't have plan A ready to roll, and you got plan A, B, and C. You're going to make some people feel bad. But yeah, so archivist is what you really want to be. I'm actually curious, how did you get into history?
So when I was 6 years old, the National Treasures movie came out, and I went to go see it with my parents in theaters, and then from then on out, there was a character, Abigail Chase, who was an archivist at the National Archives in D.C., and I was just like, that's what I want to do. I want to be her when I grow up. And, just kept that interest.
You know what? Hey,
Yeah.
anything to pique your interest, and I understand what that feels like. After I saw my first episode of SportsCenter, I was hooked.
It's like, done.
Yes,
That's
I
it.
knew exactly what I wanted to do. And you know what? Sometimes that's all it takes.
Yeah.
Well, Sydney, I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your story about your experience with volleyball, getting away from Texas, and your first experience in the Midwest, what your future plans are after you graduate next May. And you know what? I just enjoy that hearing people's stories and appreciate you coming on and sharing yours. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. We will have more videos and content up for you as soon as possible. I'd like to say thank you once again for tuning in, and I'd like to wish you all a great day.